Do not pass go. Do not collect $200 because we're not playing Monopoly. This is vaguely scientific.
I mean, we also don't have $200 to give to anyone.
Please give me $200.
Yeah.
There was a bank error in my favor. I am Derek. And Jim won second prize in a beauty contest. Hi, Jim.
That sounds wrong. I'm sure that somebody rigged that contest.
Well, our guest this week can get out of jail free. It's Joel. Hi, Joel.
Whatever it was, I did not do it.
You didn't do it. Didn't do it. You're going to be released. All charges dropped. Which is
That's
great for us because we need to do this show, which is the show where listeners send us questions to hear our vaguely scientific answers, and who knows, we might even get some of those answers right. But first, it's time for the fun science fact of the day. Jim?
All right. Bacteriophages are a type of virus that infect bacteria. And they are the type of virus that have the sort of 6 spindly legs. They have the long stalk in the middle, and they have a cool looking geometric top to them. You've probably seen them. They're kind of like the archetypical virus picture that you see when you see pictures of viruses. And they are extremely common in nature. And there's a pretty good chance you may even have some of them living in your body right now because they attack bacteria and you are filled with bacteria.
Oh, no. Now I feel just very unclean. Those are the ones that look like alien space landers.
Yeah. I love bacteriophages. They're so cool looking.
Well, now that Jim has made everyone anxious who is listening to this,
they could be good for you.
They could be good for you. I think we should move on to our first question this week.
All right.
Which comes to us from Daniel. Is Krang from Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles a Dalek from Doctor Who?
This is a surprisingly interesting question.
Right.
I say that, the way I say it makes it sound condescending, but it's like, actually, there's so much more in common with these two things than I assumed there would be. I was just like, brain-shaped guys. Like, oh, no, there's a lot of overlap here somehow.
I want to say that my gut reaction to this question was no, and the question kind of reads to me like, is Wolverine a Kryptonian?
Which he is.
Sure. So I wanted to kind of just... I would still kind of insist that no, just because we define Dalek, even though it's a fictional thing, we define what a Dalek is, and it's from Doctor Who, and Krang is also a specific fictional thing, but...
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, to be fair, they are two very different entities with two very different backstories, regardless of the fact, that they take place in obviously separate universes.
Well, sure.
But sure, the straight up answer is no, like you said. But yeah, I'm interested in sort of the nuance of that. So go ahead and sorry, I cut you off there.
No, it's fine. It's just kind of an opportunity for me to geek out in a very specific way about Ninja Turtles,
mm-hmm.
Which is one of my favorite franchises. And for me, Ninja Turtles is a very interesting litmus test for the kind of nerd someone might be. Because Ninja Turtles has inside of its canon so many different continuities. And I am under the opinion that every version of the Ninja Turtles I have seen is fine. Is absolutely fine, and I just like the Ninja Turtles, whatever they are. And I've talked to many people who have their specific continuity that they like, and the rest of them are abominations.
Yep.
Yeah.
And so I guess the long-winded way to circle back to this Dalek thing, I'll also go on record of like both of you are much more much bigger Doctor Who fans than I am, so my knowledge will be somewhat limited there. But if you were to present to me a Doctor Who Ninja Turtles crossover in which the continuity was established that Krang was a Dalek, I would totally accept that.
Oh yeah,
Fair.
it's incredibly plausible. Especially because if you're going with the iterations of or the iteration of Krang from the 2012 TV series,
Oh, okay.
it has that Krang, the Krang with two A's, has quite the Dalek like streak in taking he could easily be a Davros type figure.
Oh, okay.
The interesting thing about the 2012 series, the Krang with two A's, that is the name of the group or the species, I guess.
Right, right.
Whereas the original Krang in the 80s series, just his name was Krang.
Yeah.
And it gets further convoluted with that was originally inspired by a race of aliens called the Utrom. In the original comic run, and those, going back to like every continuity of Ninja Turtles is valid. That origin story of what exactly Krang is has been convoluted and kind of just merged together with every other iteration.
Yeah. I was reading that in much more of the recent iterations, but like the concept of Krang is more of a species, or like even I think I saw one or two where it's like they're now considered like a hive mind kind of thing.
Yeah, in the Nickelodeon series.
Oh, okay, yeah. I always wanted to watch that Nickelodeon series. I heard it was good.
It's among my favorite, at least in the early seasons. I think it had a really good balance of storytelling over marketing. Because as we all know, the original Ninja Turtles cartoon series was very heavily focused on selling toys.
Yeah.
As was everything in the 80s.
Yeah.
Is the 2012 series the one that has the vastly different animation style too?
Yeah, it's like the 3D CGI.
Okay. Because that, I think that is the only, like, I get, especially having reading and done the research, looking into more about the Utrom, I get why there would be fans that have those much preferred universes, because I know that like the IDW universe is vastly different from the Image Comics universe or the cartoon series, the original from the 80s, things like that, or whatever, things that Mirage came out with. I was surprised to see just how many different iterations there have been, but for me, I think some of it comes down to the animation style, because I grew up on the 80s Turtles, and so something that looks so distinctively different. Like, I'm not a big fan of the Michael Bay Turtles movies because of the appearance of the Turtles, even though I was perfectly fine with the live action one.
The reason that I refrained from bringing up the Michael Bay one, because it is the one black mark on my Ninja Turtles passion.
Sure.
But I can back it up though by saying the reason I think that one is weaker, and it is even evidenced in the, as Joel is saying, the animation style, the design of the turtles, it's just everything about it shows kind of a lack of respect for what they are adapting. And that's kind of what it, like, I do know that it is a fairly popular opinion that the Nickelodeon 2012 series, a lot of people don't like the animation. It's very like early computer CGI, and so like you run into problems with Uncanny Valley and stuff. Having watched a decent amount of it, I think it's technical limitations, but what they were trying to do with the series was very like in the spirit of let's honor the story. which
Mhm.
is
Right.
why I think that I like that one.
Yeah. I watched, I think, 10 or 12 episodes of that, and I really enjoyed it. But yeah, I think it's kind of interesting to see, because I sort of have gotten used to the idea of comics having somewhat consistent lore, and it seems that Ninja Turtles really doesn't have that in quite the same way. And not that that's any better or worse, but I just think that's kind of interesting because there are far more splits in the timeline, I guess you could say.
Yeah.
I was quite surprised when I saw how many overlaps there were with the Daleks and the Krang, the various versions of Krang. Because I didn't know that Krang was an alien, for starters. I don't know
Ah.
like that much about Ninja Turtles. I need to get more Ninja Turtles media in my life, but didn't know it was an alien. Don't know why, because I've watched the original cartoon when I was a child. So, but that was kind of interesting. Also, like the vague shape of Krang, this sort of like
Octopus brain.
octopus brain, like, and the fact that he rides in a little power suit armor thing. So
Yeah.
Yeah, the similarities are definitely there, and I think that was enough to definitely warrant the question. Um, because I realized when I looked at the question, I went, I never thought about that before.
mhm.
Even lore wise, you look at almost every iteration of the Utrom, the species that Krang comes from, are they started out as or they most of them are in fact a peaceful pacifist kind of race of extraterrestrial beings, which is how the Daleks were supposed to start out before they got into their big war.
Yeah.
That I didn't know.
Yeah, there was a very big war between the Khalids and the Thals, and
Balls, yeah, yeah.
both humanoid. They all look like people, but basically the creation of the Daleks is like the end point of this war, where the mad scientist Davros is like, "Hey, I'm gonna take all this mutation and just mutate to the logical conclusion of what our species will look like after all the mutation from the radioactivity kind of runs its course, and I'm gonna throw it in a battle armor." And that's the origin of the Daleks, and they go and they wreck house,
Huh.
which is very different than the what are they, the Utals?
Utrom.
Utrom,
Utrom.
yeah.
Yeah, I was smashing them together. It's pretty different than like the Utrom thing with like the war and the battle armor and stuff. But it's like, I don't know. It's not super far removed. It's not close enough that it's like a ripoff, but it's like, oh, it's coincidental. I can see some overlap here.
Yeah, and it was fascinating because like in Doctor Who, the Daleks originally, or the Thal and
The Khaled.
Khalid, the Khalid looked much more human originally, because the Thal, at least that's our understanding, I think, because if in the first episode where the Daleks are really introduced, that series, they talk about how I think they talk about how they looked far closer to each other, and then all of the, you know, messing around with DNA and
Mm-hmm.
genetics, and uh, the hidden message about the when you get into genetic breeding or genetic manipulation to eugenics. That's the
Eugenic.
word
Oh,
I'm
Oh.
okay,
looking
yeah.
for. I had to go around in context to find the word I was looking for. But yeah, the whole hidden message about eugenics and things that kind of uh, comes in through Doctor Who. But the Utrom have a very similar but different idea with their whole use of genetic manipulation and mutation through the use of the ooze. Like that was the one that I felt like a bad Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles fan for not knowing that the Utrom in most of these iterations were responsible for TCRI and the ooze and
Yeah.
basically the genesis of the Turtles and Splinter in the first place.
Mm-hmm.
The other thing that I guess this is going to be probably more obscure than either of the franchises we're talking about, but the idea of the ooze being an experiment with mutations and how to alter human biology and stuff, I wanted to throw the Japanese superhero anime Guyver in there.
Oh, okay.
Because it's a very similar idea that like they're trying to take human beings as a basis, as like a starting point, and then figure out how they can basically weaponize them as a species. And that's where I don't know if that is also a Dalek thing, because as far as I know, Daleks just want to get rid of everything that isn't Daleks.
Yeah. Well, and it also depends on the serial too, because like especially a lot of in classic Doctor Who, Daleks would enslave other races and make them do things. In fact, actually, the second time the Daleks ever showed up was a serial called The Dalek Invasion of Earth. And they, through a combination of like mind control and not like mind control, but like they would, put like hypnotizing gear on humans to make them do their bidding, turn them into robots, basically. But they would also have like human sympathizers that they would work with. So, I mean, there's a little bit of precedent for Daleks working with other species and enslaving them and doing things like that.
Yeah, whatever serves the plot.
Whatever, yeah. I guess that's ultimately what it comes down to is.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why if you were to do a Ninja Turtles Doctor Who crossover, I'm not saying that's the only way you could do it, but that would be a way you could combine the two.
If anyone would do it, IDW would.
That's true.
I may have said this on the podcast before, and I don't want to go too deep into it, but several years ago, I think it was in 2012. Might have been earlier than that. In fact, because I think I was still in high school, actually, so I think it was earlier than that. But anyway, the first Batman Ninja Turtles comic came out, and I read it, and I think it was pretty good. But a friend of mine in high school and I had written that exact plot in our heads of like how we could combine Batman with the Ninja Turtles. And then,
so wild.
And it was the exact same connection and it like logical connections, which is why I'm thinking like the reason that I bring this up is if I see a Doctor Who Ninja Turtles crossover come out in a year, I'm going to be very upset.
Yeah.
I mean, there was a Star Trek Doctor Who crossover from IDW.
Yeah,
that was really good. I saw that IDW did a Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles crossover with Stranger Things.
I haven't seen that.
I'd like to look for because it looked interesting. They have the Utrom show up, which is why they were in a. There was a specific stub for the TMNT Stranger Things crossover in Turtlepedia.
That's kind of interesting.
I had not heard of that one.
I think that there is a lot of. I think you could cross over Doctor Who with literally anything.
It does lend itself to that.
Yeah. I was going to say there's a lot of room that you could do a crossover, but it's like you could cross over Doctor Who with anything.
It's interesting because that is also true about Ninja Turtles. So like they are the two, like they're the universal receivers of crossover comics.
Yeah. That's the I gotta look something up here. Hold on. I mean, we don't have to stop. I just want to look up and see if there's any Doctor Who crossovers with General Hospital on fanfiction.net.
Now I gotta. I don't think we can keep going, Jim.
World deserves to know.
This is going very slow. Why? Maybe fanfiction.net's down. Let me try Archive of Our Own.
There is a Doctor Who General Hospital crossover on fanfiction.net.
I'm
wonderful. I need to know what it's about.
I'm like disappointed to know that, I think.
What if it was someone else behind the mask? Someone to rescue her from the nightmare she'd been living. Crackish idea that came into my head written in less than an hour.
There you go.
I think I might know what that's talking about. Hold on, let me find it. There it is, Doctor Who. There's one.
Jim has read this fan fiction.
No, but I think I might have a guess who
the average everyday sane psycho is the author.
I don't like that. I knew it. Robin Scorpio. There was a storyline. This is neither here nor there. Where somebody kidnapped Robin and was wearing like a mask to disguise who they were. And turns out to be one of the big bads of the show, who has like been a villain for 30 years. I assume this story then is instead about the Doctor being the person hiding behind the mask and then rescuing her in turn. I'm not going to read it because it sounds like a terrible plan. But I'm glad that's on there, and I'm glad that someone crossed those two things over.
No, somebody did it so that no one else had to, I guess.
Yeah,
it's a pretty short read, so I'll have to actually. I don't know enough about General Hospital to enjoy it thoroughly, but I'm sure it will still be enjoyable.
I know the correct amount to know that I don't want to read it. There is one other thing I think is probably worth bringing up. It's not really pertinent to the question per se, but since we talked about the Doctor Who and Star Trek crossover, I think it's kind of interesting that back in the 1960s, the very first time that the Cybermen showed up, which was coincidentally the last Doctor, the last of the first Doctor stories. He regenerates at the end of that one, but the Cybermen, there was actually a cyber leader named Krang. And I think it's totally a coincidence. Like, obviously, these two things have nothing to do with each other. But Cybermen are also a little bit similar to Krang in that they are like a biological entity piloting some kind of humanoid mech suit.
Right.
And the fact that his name is Krang is just kind of fun.
So it's entirely possible that somewhere in the genesis of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, there is some Doctor Who connection, even if it's unconscious.
Yeah.
My favorite thing of contemplating the idea behind a crossover between Doctor Who and the Turtles is that if the Utrum are an offshoot from the Dalek species in some way or something like that, then it means that the Daleks are also responsible for Daredevil.
That is true. That is true, and Marvel will regret for the rest of their existence not making that canon when they had the chance.
Yeah,
they really should have.
I feel like that it's weird to me that the Ninja Turtles are not owned by one of the big two studios. I'm fine with that.
They would have been Marvel.
Yeah.
But,
it's just so weird to me that that's not the case, which I like. It's kind of neat that there's like a big property that's independent.
They're the champion of independent success story comic books.
And I feel like that should be the case with the Turtles. Like that feels right to me.
I wanted to mention this when you brought up Cybermen, and I thought you were going in this direction, but I don't know why, because it was not super real. Anyway, let me actually get there. Another connection you could have in the Turtles Doctor Who universe is the foot soldiers, the foot ninjas in the 80s cartoon and all the arcade video game consoles.
That's right.
The foot ninjas were always robots. And so that kind of could tie into the Cybermen. Cybermen? No, that's Dragon Ball. Is it Cybermen?
Cyber, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. It could tie into the Cybermen, and the reason that I think that's a little interesting to mention is more trivia than anything, but the reason that the foot ninjas were robots was actually the same reason that they made Krang the villain they invented Krang for the 80s cartoon, so that they could have more violence on screen without having blood and gore. And that's so they wanted to do aliens as the villains, and they wanted to do robots as the villains.
That's like I assume that's why Samurai Jack was also mostly robots.
It was, yeah.
At least during the initial run, the Adult Swim run had a lot more people.
It was closer to what Tartakovsky wanted to do with the series originally, which was more of a higher rated
Yeah.
older rated series, but Samurai
Mature.
Jack, I love that show.
Yeah. It's interesting though how much the like power armor thing shows up. I mean, that's like a trope across all of sci-fi.
Sure.
But I guess the thing that makes it compelling is that they're both like brain creatures.
Is there a story where a Dalek is inside of a Cyberman?
I don't think so. At least not in the TV show.
Because that's Krang.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right.
It really is.
Yeah.
There's a strong possibility that in something like, because there's so many novels, there are hundreds of audio dramas, like somewhere out there surely must be
Beneath
where a
the
Dalek is like, I'm going to
pale
ride around
sky.
in this person mech today.
I'm trying to think. It's an interesting thought experiment because the closest we get, at least as far as the TV show, is when the Ghost Protocol comes into effect and they have the Cybermen actually fighting the Daleks in an alternate universe.
Mm.
I don't recall the Cybermen trying to force the Daleks into being converted as much as just outright seeking to annihilate them.
Mm.
But it just I have something I'm going to have to post on the questions page now.
I also think that there's the sort of Dalek credo of we are perfect and how dare you even consider putting us into a different shaped robot.
Yeah. Which I think is interesting. I know there are nuances probably. Again, my ignorance will show with Doctor Who lore, but like the little I know, Cybermen and Daleks are very similar in their like MO.
Mm-hmm.
So like I think like yes, it does make sense they wouldn't get along, but also they should get along.
Yeah. There was actually an episode where they actually had the opportunity to form an alliance, and instead they just started insulting each other and killing each other.
As they are wont to do.
Yeah. The Dalek was like, there's only one aspect in which Cybermen are better. They're better at dying. Yeah. You are better at dying.
Well,
it's true. They were. The Daleks really cleaned their clock.
At dying? Okay.
Yeah.
That's the same episode I was talking about because it starts with the Ghost Protocol.
Oh yeah. Army of Ghosts and Doomsday.
Army of Ghosts.
That's a good episode. That's actually the second episode of Doctor Who I ever saw. The first one was much worse.
Let us know, listeners, what else we can cross Doctor Who and Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles over with. Just list literally anything and you'll be good. But in the meantime, we have a second question this week, and it is, would you rather not need to sleep or not need to eat and drink? Why? I mean, short answer, I would go with not needing to eat and drink.
Really?
Interesting.
Yeah. Which is, as far as I have polled all the people I know, it is like, I think I've only talked to 2 other people that also picked that. So I'm curious to see what the 2 of you say.
Well, boy, I can't remember the exact question that we talked about a long, long time ago. But I know that we had talked about the idea of getting rid of sleep forever.
Yeah.
And my thesis remains the same, and that is that I just want all that extra time that I'm wasting back.
Okay.
Yeah.
It'd be a good investment.
I also think that as compared to the experiences that I have had eating versus the experiences that I have had either just of sleep or dreams that I later recall, I think I would rather keep the eating thing because
keep the meeting need
I would
to sleep.
I would rather not need to sleep.
Okay.
Both for the aspect of the amount of time that it would provide, and the that I have much more memorable eating experiences than sleeping experiences.
Okay. Well, let's dive into this because there's nuances that we can explore. Let me give you my explanation as to why I differ. And it could absolutely be situational. But on the point of having more time, I think if I didn't need to eat or drink, that would significantly cut down on the amount I would need to work, because I would not have those expenses.
Mm-hmm.
So, and sleeping is free. Food costs money.
Oh.
The other thing, and you know, I'm not trying to sway you. I'm just explaining my position.
No, that's a good point.
But the other thing I wanted to dive into about this question, because the next element of it, the reason that I might skew towards sleep over eating and drinking, is that I like eating and drinking. But does the question mean we can't do the thing we don't need to do? Like, are we still able to sleep even if we don't need to?
Well, that's the crux of it is that would you rather not need to? So yeah. I think it's optional.
So that's where I think if I still have the option to like eat or at least taste things, not needing to.
Oh, like no, everything that you eat from this point on is going to taste like the cornstarch packing peanuts.
There's another element to it, because that gets into a lot of like lore. I'm thinking specifically Vampire the Masquerade here. That they can't eat anything other than blood, and whatever they eat, it just turns to ash in their mouth. And I'm like, that's kind of the same question, because like they just don't get to eat.
Yeah,
a little bit. I don't know.
And when you consider that the whole vampire mythos is partly about the ability to embrace hedonism, that's a terrible curse.
Right? Yeah. So that's why my answer is mostly based on economic considerations.
That's fair.
Including like having enough time. Well, the main reason I don't have enough time in the day to like relax and stuff is because I have things I need to do. You know, and like we need to make money and we need to go. There's another element. I'm talking a lot. I'm sorry. There's another element to it. If I am the only person who gets this power, and I choose not needing to sleep, I already am often suffering from insomnia. And at 2 a.m, there is nothing to do. Like nothing is open. People are asleep. Like, so if the entire species didn't have to sleep, that would change things.
Yeah, sure. Yeah. Alternatively, there's always the Nintendo Switch at 2 a.m.
Precisely. That's where I get in trouble and into my insomnia, is that when you've got 4 kids, there is not a lot of downtime, queue time, and so for me that time gets deferred into after kids and folks go to bed, and that can sometimes have disastrous effects on sleep cycles.
Right. Well, but the one thing I do want to add actually to Derek's argument, because I think this is an important factoid here, is that if you are awake for an extra, let's say 8 hours, because that's the average, but it's not how much sleep any of us get, let's be fair. Either way, if you're awake for an extra, 5 to 8 hours every day, you are going to have at least one more meal. We are awake for upwards of 16 hours every day or more, and we have to eat 3 meals during that time. So if you add another whole extra cycle to that, you're definitely going to need to eat at least one more meal, which is going to be more expensive. You're going to be going through more food. You're going to have to spend time preparing that food. You can't just eat a pound of grapes.
Yeah. And that's an interesting point that you both, I guess, brought up. That I hadn't really factored in. I'm sure I've considered it at some point, but I don't have children, and both of you do. So, like, that does change things.
And when you're a parent, sleep deprivation becomes very much a way of life. So, if somebody were to put it to you, would you rather not have to eat or not have to sleep? You'd be like, well, I already don't sleep, so let's make that no longer be a requisite.
Yeah, let's fix that problem. And that's what, yeah, I think this is a very good either or for me, because like if I could pick both, I would pick both.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I think to add weight to the Derek camp in this argument,
Mm-hmm.
one of the things that occurred to me would be if it's not just you that gets this ability, because I think that's a good consideration. But if this were would humanity not have to eat or not have to sleep
Yeah.
as part of our general design? It brings up an important ecological consideration as well,
Oh.
because if it were about considering the ecology of it, then I would actually have to side with Derek and say, let's get rid of the need to eat, because it would almost, not quite, but almost single-handedly solve our current climate change crisis.
Yeah.
Sure. And
That's
just
true.
resource management. And
Yeah.
I think, yeah, and I admit that kind of makes it a completely different question.
Mm-hmm.
But I thought it was worth at least bringing up, because it didn't specify like why you, like, if would you as a human being not need to do these things, or just would you as an individual
Yeah.
want,
Yeah. Although,
it makes it very different.
Actually, there's a point that I was just not thinking about until right this minute, is that eating is frequently sort of a social activity. And people go out to have dinner. They go out and have something before they go see a movie. Like, not even just dates, but like, people go out and they meet up with friends and eat 16 pounds of wings and things like that.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, if you didn't have to, like, I guess, to be fair, the question doesn't say that you can't, but
right.
It's sort of like one of those things where the social aspect of eating is a big part of our lives. And if we suddenly no longer had to do that, I wonder what that would do to like the social network of people who go out and do those things regularly.
I mean, I definitely have had friends who, like, when we get together, the only thing we do is like, let's go to a restaurant. And that's what we do. And that gets to another interesting issue, because like if we could still eat, I definitely would still eat, because I like flavor, and that's, but the other thing about if you don't have somewhere to go eat, that's kind of like bringing up the lack of third spaces crisis that we're kind of all dealing with in our adulthood.
Yeah.
And like post-COVID is like what do people go out and do?
Yeah. I mean, there's really no good third spaces. It's certainly not free ones. You can't go to a restaurant and get in free.
Yeah, and just sit there and hang out.
Yeah, the only third space I could really think of that's like, oh, this is a fun place to spend time is like if you go to the library, which I enjoy going to the library.
The issue I have with libraries is that most of them close at 5 p.m.
Yeah.
Oh, not around here.
Oh,
They're
really?
open until like 8 or 9.
Oh, wow.
Okay.
That's cool. I mean, that's the thing, is that certainly with the third space situation is that they have hours that are corresponding with business hours, which nothing that you need to do should correspond to business hours. They shouldn't let banks close at 5. What is wrong with people?
Right?
They should just have different shifts.
This is why comic shops are also a very good thing, because they create that third space environment.
Yeah.
But you have to have kind of niche interests,
right,
to find that.
And then you have to have like a friend group in a specific hobby.
I think the solution is we need to create third spaces for social sleeping.
Yeah.
That's called a hostel.
Yeah, I guess that's fair.
Good point.
Don't get hostile about it.
Oh, I gotta go.
The other thing about not having to eat, though, is that it is. I mean, this is a good thing, I think, but it is such a hassle to have to prepare food, and like, I don't like cooking all that much. Like, I'll do it, and I'm not terrible at cooking. I'm decent at it, but like, I don't know. That's like 30 minutes of your day per meal that you have to. Nah, maybe not necessarily. Like you pour a bowl of cereal in the morning. That's not 30 minutes, but like food prep is a thing and I don't like doing it. So,
Yeah. Well,
Right.
there's the expense involved and the time commitment to it. And, but you can make the same argument about sleeping, obviously, the time commitment.
yeah. And if you don't have to eat, you have a whole extra room in your house that you could do whatever you want with. You don't need a kitchen anymore.
You don't need a kitchen. I don't know if this is a counter to that or even if it's relevant at all, but just the idea that like some people genuinely do enjoy cooking, but at the same time some people genuinely enjoy painting or any other thing that some person may not enjoy. So that doesn't really change whether or not they can pursue hobbies.
Yeah.
In the words of Hoburn Wash, some people juggle geese.
I can only speak from personal experience, but the reason that I do enjoy cooking but didn't enjoy working in food service was that like when I cook, I then get to eat what I cooked.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
So like, would I still want to do that? I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, to be fair, working in food service is also a totally different beast. So,
Well, yeah. I don't like cooking if it is just solely for someone else.
right, right.
Like I'll do it, but I don't get as much joy out of it.
Sure.
Sure.
I think it's interesting to think about the way that it would also not having to eat would also cause problems for like the local economy. Like every restaurant, and there's so many restaurants. And I mean, if eating is optional, they're not all going to crash and burn, but like a lot of them are going to crash and burn. All you're going to have left is Applebee's, man.
But I'm gonna still, so if we shift to it is a species wide thing that just we don't need to eat anymore. Would we need a food service industry? Because like you could say the economy would crash or people wouldn't be able to make money that way, but like also you wouldn't need money to buy food.
Yeah, true.
So,
that's a good point.
I guess the question that rises is whether this is a matter of suddenly we no longer need to eat, like there's been some kind of scientific breakthrough that has completely changed the face of the world, and now suddenly you no longer need to eat because we've developed this new medical technology or something.
Yeah.
Or whether
it's certainly not photosynthesis.
We never needed to eat in the first place.
I just had a thought, like scientists have developed this pill that if you take it, you don't have to eat for the rest of your life. It's called cyanide.
Or we came to an actual agreement with the adipose and doing the full Doctor Who tie-in all over again.
Tying it back in, yeah. Crossover number 1. Get on it, audience.
We got to do the vaguely scientific General Hospital crossover.
I'll do that.
I feel like though, after we've successfully filmed the cross, if anyone who works on General Hospital is listening and you want to invite us on your show for literally any reason, I mean, you had the lady who is like the host of Who Wants to Be a Millionaire, what's her name? Meredith something. She was on for like a week. There was no reason to do that. Invite us on. There's no reason to do that either. Anyway.
Yeah, Richard Simmons was on that show.
Well, there's always a reason to have Richard Simmons on the show.
That's fair.
Anyway, but what I was going to say is after we spend a lot of hard work and time on General Hospital, it'd be really nice if I could get home, relax and not have to go to sleep, because then I can play video games.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Because I think even after all of the like actual good benefits of not having to eat, I still kind of want to have that extra time back.
I mean, but what it boils down to for me on that specific point is I think you are getting extra free time either way.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
And that's kind of the main point I had, and I don't have anything else to say on the topic.
Yeah. You're probably getting at least 2 hours back by not having to eat, depending on how long it takes for you to prep and eat.
Well, and
fair.
work. and work to pay for food.
The extra the free time that we get from the act of sleeping, which is what I thought I heard you saying the initial argument was, but now I'm back on track. That time that you get sleeping is not time that you get to, unless you are capable of lucid dreaming, which would also be a reasonable solution now. That's not time that you get to choose what you are doing. It is kind
Fair.
of time that is dictated as a necessity for survival and for not going psychotic.
Yeah, that's fair.
Which I think raises another question of
how psychotic will we become?
Right. Since sleep is this ability for the brain to not be taking in new stimulus and having to process and interpret all of that stimulus 24/7.
That's a good point.
What would be the ramifications of suddenly an entire species not needing to sleep?
Right.
Again, is it a scientific breakthrough, or is it a natural development of the species? And how do our brains adapt to process all of these things that sleep is designed to help us process?
Is that what the question was about in that episode where we had Chris on, and the episode title is 8 extra hours of fun time?
I think it was literally...
Was it Why Do We Dream or something like that?
I think it was Why Do We Need to Sleep?
Okay.
And that's what we had talked about. There's a lot of things we actually don't understand about sleep. And I want to, I mean, I'm getting a little into the weeds tangentially here, but like, we could explore further what it means to not need to sleep versus what it means to not need to eat and drink. And I don't know specifically with sleep. I know that sleep helps with memory retention and stuff. So is the assumption that we just don't need to sleep to do that, but we still function the same way? And then if you don't need to eat or drink, do you also still not need to, like, you would then not need to go to the bathroom? That logically follows.
That's even more hours added to your day,
right? That's hours. That's most of my day.
Wow. Maybe you should get some X-Lax.
Yeah. Well, that's why it's hours of my day.
Oh, yeah. Because that's all you eat is X-Lax.
That's all I use. What is there other stuff to eat?
Bananas.
Oh, okay.
I hear they're mildly radioactive and give off antimatter, but
yeah.
Was that on the show, or was that before we started?
That was
it's in the recording
before we started.
Okay,
it is recorded, but it was before we started the episode.
That's true. I mean, it's such a weird, like, doing either one of these things is going to fundamentally change so much about our lives, whether it's just you personally or our entire society.
Yeah.
But like, if you personally no longer have to sleep, it's going to raise a lot of unanswered questions. And perhaps unanswerable too. Like, we still don't know why we need to sleep.
I mean, that's why I can't think of more ways to go from sleeping. But like with eating, I can think of how do we then generate energy, and do we still need to excrete waste and all sorts of other things. And then with sleep, I can only think, like, I guess we wouldn't dream anymore. Would that stifle our creativity? Is maybe a loose straw I can grasp at?
Potentially, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of the ideas that I've had for stories over the years have come from various dreams. So
yeah, that isn't to say you wouldn't have thought of them.
Sure,
like otherwise. I don't know.
And it's also not to say that I wouldn't have just thought of different ideas.
True,
but it's kind of weird to think about that. Like, oh yeah, there's so much utility in both of these two things, both socially and creatively, that I didn't think about before we started.
That's why we do this.
Yeah. And hopefully we made the audience think about this a lot harder too.
Sure, many in our audience will be up all night thinking about this.
Ooh.
Eventually they'll pass out.
That was
or
good.
Have a psychotic break.
Well, audience, I mean, this week, let us know what Ninja Turtles and Doctor Who lore kept you up at night and what you were eating while you were thinking about it.
It better be pizza.
It better be pizza.
Yeah.
Whoa.
Pizza flavored Pringles.
Pizza. And if you have a thought on that, pizza flavored Pringles, any of the other things that we talked about, you can email us at feedback@vaguelyscientific.com, or you can comment on our blog, or you can like us on Facebook, or you can X tweet at the X Twitter. I still don't know if X is a verb. I just don't get it. I don't know.
That's why I never say it.
Everyone still calls it Twitter.
Yeah.
Everyone still calls it Twitter.
It is the greatest example of I reject your reality and substitute with my own.
Yeah.
Can we collectively change reality if we just ignore it long enough? Ooh. Yeah. Hey, Jim, where do we get all these wacky questions?
We get them from you, the listener. And if you, the listener, has a question that needs to be answered in a vaguely scientific manner, please email us at questions@vaguelyscientific.com. If you want to get our episodes the minute that they're released, you can subscribe to our podcast on Apple Podcasts, YouTube, Spotify, and all the other great places that cool podcasts like to hang out. And subscribing and leaving feedback really helps us out, and so does telling your friends.
And you can tell them while you're out to dinner with them.
Yeah!
Would be easier than telling them in your sleep.
Yeah, probably more welcome.
True. Yeah. Don't shake your friends awake and be like, I just heard this great podcast.
You got to listen to it right now.
Yeah, they might stop being friends with you. Our vaguely musical intro is composed by Anthony Pizzelli, and don't forget to check out our merch store over at vaguelyscientific.threadless.com. You don't want to sleep on all these great deals and designs.
Ooh, that was good. Oh. That was good.
I should do that more often, try to actually tie it into the episode.
Well, we had some good zingers in this one here. So,
that's true. Yeah.
On that note, thanks, Joel, for being here this week.
Mm-hmm.
Pleasure.
And for Vaguely Scientific, I am Derek.
I'm Jim.
And cowabunga, dudes, I'm Joel.
Yeah, and welcome to our 7th year of Vaguely Scientific.
Woohoo! Toodaloo, everyone.
When I was looking at the questions the other day, about explosive bananas, I learned that one banana, the average banana, produces a particle of antimatter roughly once every 75 minutes.
Cool.
Anytime anybody says antimatter, I'm like, you're making that up.
I'll post the article in the Discord.
Okay.
Is it a positron? Because I can get behind positron.
It is a positron. It is
Nice.
a positron.